The great hall stretched for almost a kilometer in every direction. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top, and its walls were made of a strange crystal that changed color with the moods of those inside. This was the chamber of the Galactic Concord, the most important place in the known universe. Here, the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy met to decide the fate of trillions of lives. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka walked through the massive doors and felt very small. She had felt this way for 20 years, ever since she first came to represent Earth at these meetings. The feeling never went away. It was not just the size of the chamber that made her feel small. It was the way the other species looked at her. Or rather, the way they did not look at her at all. The Velthari delegation sat in their elevated seats, their long purple bodies coiled around chairs made of living wood. They had 6 arms each and eyes that glowed with soft yellow light. They were talking among themselves in their clicking language, and they did not even glance at Yuki as she passed. The Kethari were worse. They were massive creatures, like wet mountains of flesh with too many mouths. They ate other species. Not for food, they claimed, but for knowledge. They said they absorbed the memories of those they consumed. The Galactic Concord had made them promise to only eat volunteers. Yuki did not believe there were many volunteers. The Ascended Realms sent their Dominarch, a being of pure energy contained in a crystal shell. They believed themselves to be the highest form of life in the universe. They had enslaved dozens of species across hundreds of worlds, claiming it was their right as superior beings. The Concord did nothing about this. The Ascended Realms were too powerful to challenge. Yuki took her seat in the far corner of the chamber, in the section reserved for minor species. Earth had been part of the Galactic Concord for 300 years, ever since humanity first developed faster-than-light travel and encountered alien life. In all that time, humans had never been given a real voice. They could attend meetings, they could submit proposals, but they could not vote. They could not make demands, they could only ask, and the answer was almost always no. Today, Yuki had come to ask again. The session began with the usual ceremonies. The Velthari High Chancellor, a creature named Vorith Kai, opened the meeting with a speech about unity and cooperation. Yuki had heard this speech many times. The words were beautiful, but they meant nothing. There was no unity here. There was only power, and those who had it used it against those who did not. After the opening speech, the delegations began presenting their concerns. The Kethari wanted permission to expand their hunting grounds into a new sector. The request was approved in minutes. The Ascended Realms wanted to claim a system that was home to a primitive species that had not yet developed space travel. They wanted to use these beings as servants. The request was approved with barely any discussion. Then it was Yuki's turn. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, but most of them were not really seeing her. To them, she was not important enough to see. Honored members of the Galactic Concord, she began. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this speech many times. I come before you today to present evidence of a grave injustice. She activated her datapad, and holographic images appeared in the air above her. They showed a planet, blue and green and beautiful. Then they showed the same planet after it had been attacked. The surface was black and burned. Nothing lived there anymore. This is Kepler 442b, Yuki said. It was a human colony. 12 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children, families. They were peaceful. They had no weapons. She changed the image. Now it showed ships with the markings of a mining corporation. 6 months ago, the Zelrath Mining Consortium came to this system. They wanted the minerals beneath the planet's surface. The colonists refused to leave their homes, so the consortium burned them. The images changed again. Bodies in the streets, buildings reduced to ash, children's toys melted by heat weapons. 12 million humans died, Yuki said. We have sent 17 formal complaints to this council. We have provided evidence. We have begged for justice. And what has been done? She looked around the chamber. The Velthari were not paying attention. The Kethari were eating something, their many mouths making wet sounds. The Dominarch's crystal shell flickered with what might have been boredom. Nothing. Yuki answered her own question. Nothing has been done. The Zelrath Consortium continues to operate. Their leaders have not been punished. They have not even been questioned. She took a deep breath. The Galactic Concord was founded on the principle that all species deserve protection. that the strong should not prey upon the weak. But I have sat in this chamber for 20 years, and I have seen these principles betrayed again and again, not just against humans, but against dozens of species who have no power, no voice, no way to defend themselves. For the first time, some of the delegates were actually looking at her, but their expressions were not sympathetic. They were annoyed. Who was this small creature from an unimportant world to lecture them? The Velthari High Chancellor raised one of his 6 arms. "Ambassador Tanaka," he said. His voice was smooth and cold. "Your passion is noted, but the matter you describe is a commercial dispute. The Zelrath Consortium operates under Velthari law. If your colonists had grievances, they should have filed them through proper channels." "They did file them," Yuki said. "They filed them for 3 years. They were ignored. Then perhaps their case was not strong enough. Their case was their right to live." The Chancellor's yellow eyes narrowed. "You are becoming emotional, Ambassador. This is not helpful." A wet, gurgling sound came from the Kethari section. It was laughter. "The human is upset," one of them said. "How amusing. They are such short-lived creatures, so attached to their individual existences." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Yuki felt her hands trembling, but she kept her voice calm. "I am not asking for special treatment," she said. "I am asking for the same protection that is granted to other species. I am asking for justice." The Dominarch of the Ascended Realms spoke for the first time. His voice came from everywhere at once, echoing off the crystal walls. "Justice is a concept invented by the weak to constrain the strong. Your species is barely sentient by our standards. You have existed for only a fraction of a moment in cosmic time. Your grievances do not concern this body." Yuki stared at the glowing crystal shell. "We are sentient enough to feel pain," she said. "We are sentient enough to mourn our dead. Then perhaps you should not have colonized a world you could not defend." The chamber fell silent. It was not a respectful silence. It was the silence of people who considered the matter closed. Yuki stood alone in the center of that vast space. She had known this would happen. She had known before she even walked through the doors. But some part of her had hoped, as she always hoped, that this time would be different, that someone would listen, that someone would care. No one cared. She looked around the chamber one more time. At the Velthari, who saw humans as insects. At the Kethari, who saw them as potential food. At the Ascended Realms, who did not see them at all. At the dozens of other species who had watched 12 million people die and felt nothing. Yuki closed her datapad. She straightened her back, and she said the words she had been authorized to say if this meeting went the way everyone expected it to go. "I understand," she said. Her voice was quiet, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber. "The Galactic Concord has made its position clear. Earth accepts this." She paused. "Therefore, on behalf of the United Nations of Earth and all human territories, I am announcing that humanity is formally withdrawing from the Galactic Concord. We will no longer send delegates to these meetings. We will no longer submit proposals for your consideration. We will no longer ask for justice that will never come." A few of the delegates looked surprised. Most did not. "Our trade agreements with Concord members will end in 30 standard days. Our borders will be closed to all non-human vessels. Our communications networks will be disconnected from the galactic grid." The Velthari Chancellor made a dismissive gesture. "If you wish to isolate yourselves, that is your choice. But you should know that species who leave the Concord lose its protections. You will have no allies, no support, no recourse if you are attacked." Yuki smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We have had no protections for 300 years. We have had no allies, no support, no recourse. We have only had the illusion of these things, and we are tired of illusions." She began walking toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the chamber. "You will not hear from us again," she said over her shoulder. "Go back to your business. Divide the galaxy among yourselves. Enslave the weak. Consume the helpless. Do what you have always done." She reached the great doors. "Just remember," she said, and her voice was very quiet now, "that we will be watching. We will be remembering. And we will be preparing." The doors closed behind her. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then the Kethari made their wet laughing sound again. "Preparing," one of them repeated. "What could they possibly prepare? They have no fleet, no weapons, no resources worth mentioning. They are nothing. Less than nothing, the Velthari Chancellor agreed. Their entire species could be wiped out in a single afternoon if we wished it. They are wise to hide in their little corner of the galaxy. Should we pursue them? The Dominarch asked. They could be a nuisance if they attempt to contact other minor species. The Chancellor considered this for a moment. No, he decided. They are not worth the effort. Within a few generations, they will either come crawling back to us or they will destroy themselves. Humans are not capable of long-term planning. They are too emotional, too chaotic. Let them go. The session continued. Within an hour, the matter of humanity's withdrawal had been forgotten. There were more important things to discuss. Trade routes, territory disputes, the upcoming war between two minor powers that the Concord would pretend to mediate while secretly profiting from both sides. Earth was erased from the agenda. It would not appear again for a very long time. In her quarters on the station, Yuki Tanaka removed her ambassador's uniform for the last time. She folded it carefully and placed it in a box. Then she changed into simple civilian clothes and walked to the docking bay where an unmarked human ship was waiting for her. The pilot, a young man named James, helped her aboard. How did it go? He asked. Exactly as we expected, Yuki said. They don't see us as a threat. They don't see us at all. James nodded. The council back home will be pleased. Pleased isn't the right word. But yes, this is what we planned for. The ship lifted off and headed toward the jump point that would take them out of conquered space. Yuki sat by the window and watched the massive station grow smaller behind them. She thought about the 12 million people who had died on Kepler 442b. She thought about all the other humans who had been killed, enslaved, or exploited over the past 300 years while the Concorde did nothing. It begins now, she said quietly. Ma'am? The real work. Everything before this was just waiting, just learning. Now we start building. She pulled out a secure communicator and entered a code that would send a message across hundreds of light years in an instant. The message was simple. Phase 2 begins. Across human space, in secret facilities hidden on moons and asteroids and in the hearts of gas giants, that message was received. And everywhere it was received, people who had been waiting for this moment their entire lives began to move. Scientists activated projects that had been theoretical for decades. Engineers began building machines that should not have been possible. Soldiers started training for a war that might not come for 100 years. They did not know when the day of reckoning would arrive. They only knew that it would come, and that when it did, humanity would be ready. Yuki watched the stars stream past as the ship entered faster than light travel. She was 62 years old. She might not live to see what humanity was planning, but her children would, or their children, or their children's children. It did not matter how long it took. Humans knew how to wait. They knew how to remember, and they knew how to build. The galaxy had taught them that they were nothing, that they were small and weak and insignificant, that their lives did not matter, that their deaths did not matter, that their pain was amusing and their hope was foolish. The galaxy had been a very effective teacher. Now humanity would show the galaxy what it had learned. In the chamber of the Galactic Concorde, the session continued late into the night. Wars were planned. Peoples were condemned. The strong continued to prey upon the weak, as they always had. No one noticed that the human section of the chamber was empty. No one noticed when human ships stopped appearing in conquered space. No one noticed when the star called Sol disappeared from the communications grid, and the region around it became dark and silent. Why would they notice? Humanity was not important. Humanity had never been important. They were just another failed species, retreating to their home system to die in obscurity. The great powers of the galaxy returned to their great concerns. They fought their wars and made their deals and grew fat on the suffering of those beneath them. They expanded their empires and crushed their enemies and believed that this would continue forever. They did not look toward the small yellow star on the edge of the galaxy. They did not wonder what was happening in the darkness. They did not ask themselves what a species of 8 billion angry, patient, determined beings might accomplish if given enough time and enough motivation. They did not think about humanity at all. This was a mistake. 150 years passed. In that time, the galaxy changed. It did not change for the better. The Galactic Concorde, which had held the great powers together through mutual greed and mutual fear, began to fall apart. Without a common purpose, without external threats to unite against, the 12 founding species turned on each other. Old grudges that had been buried for thousands of years came back to the surface. Secret alliances formed in the darkness. Weapons were built. Plans were made. The first war began over something small. A mining dispute in a system that nobody cared about. The Velthari claimed the system belonged to them. The Reth Dominion disagreed. Harsh words were exchanged. Then ships were exchanged. Then fire. The war lasted 30 years and killed 4 billion people. When it was over, the Velthari had won, but they had spent so much blood and treasure that they were weakened for generations. Other wars followed. The Kethari, ever hungry, began expanding beyond their traditional hunting grounds. They did not ask permission. They did not offer payment. They simply came and took what they wanted. Species that had lived in peace for millennia found themselves on the menu. The Galactic Concord held emergency meetings. They passed resolutions condemning the Kethari. They threatened sanctions. The Kethari ate the ambassadors who delivered these threats and continued their expansion. The Ascended Realms watched all of this and saw opportunity. While the other powers fought among themselves, the Dominarch quietly added system after system to his domain. He did not need to conquer with weapons. He simply offered protection to the weak and frightened. And in exchange, they gave him everything. Their resources, their labor, their freedom. Within 50 years, the Ascended Realms controlled more territory than any other power in the galaxy. Their slave population numbered in the hundreds of billions. They were not cruel masters, exactly. They provided food and shelter and order. They simply did not consider their subjects to be people. They were resources, nothing more. During all of this, no one thought about Earth. Why would they? Humanity had left the Concord a century and a half ago. Their space was dark. Their communications were silent. Occasionally, a merchant ship would wander too close to human territory and never return. Occasionally, a scout would try to penetrate the border and simply vanish. The region around Sol was marked on stellar maps as the dead zone. Navigation computers were programmed to route around it automatically. Stories were told about what had happened there. Some said humanity had destroyed itself in a nuclear war. Some said a plague had wiped them out. Some said something from outside the galaxy had found them and consumed them. The truth was that no one knew, and no one cared enough to find out. Commander Varric of the Velthari Imperial Navy was one of the few people who ever thought about humanity anymore. He had studied their history as part of his military training. He had read about their wars, their religions, their strange customs. He had found them fascinating in the way that extinct animals were fascinating. One day, his superiors gave him an unusual order. He was to take a small scout ship to the edge of the dead zone and try to gather information about what had happened to the humans. The Velthari Empire was planning to expand in that direction, and they wanted to know if the territory was safe to claim. Varric accepted the mission. He took his ship and his crew of 12 and set out toward Sol. They crossed into human space on a quiet day. Nothing happened at first. Their sensors worked normally. Their navigation systems functioned as expected. Varric began to wonder if all the stories about the dead zone were just superstition. Then, on the third day, something strange happened. Their sensors stopped working. Not dramatically, not with alarms and warnings. They simply began showing nothing. Empty space in every direction, even though Varric knew there were stars and planets nearby. "What's happening?" he asked his sensor officer. "I don't know, Commander. It's like something is eating our signals. They go out, but nothing comes back." Varric ordered them to continue. They had to gather information. That was the mission. On the fourth day, they saw something. It was just a glimpse, at the edge of visual range. A shape in the darkness, long and black, like a shadow given form. It was there for a moment, and then it was gone. "Did anyone else see that?" Varric asked. His crew had seen it. They were afraid. On the fifth day, their engines stopped working. There were no warnings, no alarms. The engines simply shut down, as if someone had flipped a switch. The ship drifted in the void, powerless. Varric tried to contact his fleet. The communication systems did not respond. "We're dead in space," his engineer reported. "I don't understand it. There's nothing wrong with the systems. They should be working. They just aren't." The crew was beginning to panic. Varric tried to keep them calm. They had emergency supplies. They could survive for weeks if necessary. Someone would come looking for them. But deep down, Varric knew the truth. No one would come. He had crossed into the dead zone, and the dead zone had claimed him. On the 6th day, the black ships came. There were 3 of them, and they were like nothing Varric had ever seen. They were huge, many times larger than his scout vessel, and they moved without visible engines. They made no sound, sent no signals, gave no warnings. They simply appeared, surrounding his ship like wolves surrounding a wounded animal. For a long moment, nothing happened. Varric stared at the black ships and wondered if he was about to die. Then a light appeared. A docking tube extended from the largest ship and connected to his vessel. The airlock opened without his permission. A figure stepped through. It was a human. Varric had seen images of humans before, but he had never met one in person. They were smaller than Velthari, with only 4 limbs and soft, vulnerable bodies. Their eyes were strange, with whites around colored centers. Their faces were disturbingly expressive. This human was female, dressed in a black uniform with no markings. She looked at Varric and his crew with an expression he could not read. "You are in human space," she said. Her voice was calm. "This is forbidden." "We did not know," Varric said. "Our navigational systems failed. We are lost." "Your systems did not fail. They were turned off." Varric felt a chill run through his body. "Turned off? How?" "We detected no weapons fire. No electromagnetic pulses." The human smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You detected nothing because we did not want you to detect anything. Your ship, your sensors, your weapons, your engines, they all belong to us now. They have belonged to us since you crossed the border." Varric did not understand. The technology required to do such a thing was beyond anything he had ever heard of. The Velthari were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their ships were state-of-the-art. How could these humans, these primitive humans, simply take control of them? "What do you want?" he asked. "We want to know why you are here." Varric saw no reason to lie. "The Velthari Empire is considering expansion into this region. I was sent to scout the territory." The human nodded, as if this was exactly what she had expected. "And what will you tell them when you return?" I don't know. I will tell them what I have seen." "And what have you seen, Commander Varric?" He stared at her. "How do you know my name?" "We know everything about you. We have known since the moment you decided to accept this mission. We have been watching." Varric's crew was huddled together, terrified. One of them, a young officer, raised a weapon. He was going to shoot the human. The human did not even look at him. She just raised one hand, and the weapon flew out of the officer's grip and clattered to the floor. "Telekinesis," Varric whispered. "Humans don't have psychic abilities." "We didn't," the human agreed. "We do now. We have learned many things in the last 150 years. We have improved ourselves, our technology, our capabilities. While the galaxy was busy fighting and dying and forgetting about us, we were evolving." She walked closer to Varric. Her eyes were very dark. "We are going to let you go, Commander. We are going to restore power to your ship, and you are going to fly back to the Velthari Empire. And when your superiors ask what you found in the dead zone, you are going to tell them the truth." "What truth?" "That humanity is not dead. That we are not hiding. That we are not afraid. You are going to tell them that we have been building, preparing, that we have weapons and ships and soldiers beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen." She paused. "And you are going to tell them that we remember." "Remember what?" "Everything. Every insult, every death, every act of cruelty committed by the great powers, while the Concord did nothing. We have records of every human colony that was destroyed, every human citizen who was killed, enslaved, or exploited. We have names, dates, locations. We have been keeping very careful track." Varric swallowed. "And what are you going to do with this information?" The human smiled again. "Nothing. Yet. We are patient, Commander. We have learned patience from the best teachers in the galaxy. We are going to wait until the time is right, and then we are going to emerge from the darkness, and we are going to show the galaxy what 300 years of contempt has purchased." She turned and walked back toward the airlock. "Wait," Varric called after her. "Why are you telling me this? Why warn us? If you wanted to surprise us, you should have killed me, destroyed all evidence of what you're building." The human stopped at the threshold. "Because it doesn't matter. Even if you tell them everything, they won't believe you. They will think you are crazy. They will think the dead zone affected your mind. They will dismiss you, just like they dismissed us. And if they do believe me, if they send a fleet, then they will learn what we can do. And the lesson will be very expensive. She stepped through the airlock, and it sealed behind her. The black ships withdrew. Power returned to Varric's vessel. He sat in his command chair for a long time, staring at the darkness where the human ships had disappeared. Then he turned his ship around and flew home. He told his superiors everything. He told them about the black ships and the technology that could control enemy vessels from a distance. He told them about the human with psychic powers. He told them about the threat, the promise of revenge. They did not believe him. "The dead zone has affected your mind," his commanding officer said, not unkindly. "It happens. The radiation, the isolation, the strange energy fields. You should rest, Commander. Take some time to recover." Varric tried to show them his sensor logs, but the logs were empty. He tried to describe the black ships, but his description sounded like fantasy. He insisted that he was telling the truth. But the more he insisted, the crazier he seemed. Eventually, he stopped trying. He was quietly retired from the Navy and sent to live on a peaceful agricultural world. He spent the rest of his life as a farmer, growing vegetables and watching the stars at night. Sometimes, when he couldn't sleep, he would think about the human woman and her dark eyes and her terrible smile. She had been right about everything. They didn't believe him. They thought he was crazy. And somewhere in the darkness, humanity continued to build. Years became decades. Decades became a century. The galaxy continued to tear itself apart. The Velthari fought the Reth. The Kethari ate whoever they wanted. The Ascended Realms enslaved billions more. No one thought about the dead zone. No one wondered what was happening in the darkness. No one asked what humanity was preparing for, until the day the void opened, and the galaxy learned the answer. In the deep places of human space, in facilities carved into the hearts of dead stars and hidden in the clouds of gas giants, humanity worked without rest. They had united completely. There were no more nations, no more borders, no more conflicts between human beings. There was only the species, and the species had one goal: survival. And not just survival, triumph. They studied the technology of the elder races and made it better. They developed weapons that could tear apart the fundamental forces of reality. They built ships that could move faster than light without leaving traces. They trained soldiers who were stronger, faster, and smarter than any the galaxy had ever seen. They also remembered. Every human child learned the history. They learned about the 300 years of contempt. They learned about the 12 million who died on Kepler 442b. They learned about the Concord and its broken promises. They learned that the galaxy saw them as nothing, as insects, as food. And they learned that someday, they would prove the galaxy wrong. Generation after generation, humanity prepared. They did not grow tired. They did not lose focus. They passed their anger and their determination from parent to child like a sacred inheritance. "We will not forget," they told their children. "We will not forgive. We will wait, and we will build. And when the time comes, we will show them what we are." The children believed them. The children grew up and had children of their own, and they told them the same thing. Humanity had become something new, something patient, something dangerous. And somewhere in the darkness, watching everything, waiting for the perfect moment, Admiral Helena Cross counted the days until she could finally give the order. "Soon," she whispered to herself. "Soon they will see." Above her, the shipyards hummed with activity. 2,000 warships, each one more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever known, floated in perfect formation. They were black as the void, silent as death, and ready for war. All they needed was the word. Admiral Corveth of the Velthari Third Fleet was having a bad day. It had started with a routine patrol. His fleet of 200 ships was guarding the outer edges of Velthari space, watching for pirates and smugglers and the occasional Kethari hunting party. It was boring work, but important. The Third Fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, and its presence kept the enemies of the Empire at bay. Then the sensors detected something strange. "Admiral," his sensor officer said, "we're picking up unusual readings from Sector 774. "What kind of readings?" "I'm not sure. It looks like a subspace ripple. Something very large is moving through the deeper layers of space." Corveth frowned. Subspace ripples usually meant ships traveling faster than light. But the readings were enormous. bigger than anything he had ever seen. It was as if an entire moon was moving through subspace. Can you identify the source? No, sir. The energy signature doesn't match any known species. It's completely new. Corvith ordered his fleet to investigate. They moved toward Sector 774 in standard formation. Weapons charged, sensors at maximum. Whatever was out there, they would find it. What they found was impossible. The first ship emerged from the void like a nightmare crawling out of the darkness. It was black, completely black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. It was also huge, almost 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that glowed with strange energies. It came out of nowhere, tearing through the fabric of space itself, and it was followed by another, and another, and another. Corvith watched in stunned silence as ship after ship appeared. 10, 50, 100. They kept coming, pouring out of the void in perfect formation, spreading across space like a plague of shadows. How many? He whispered. Still counting, sir. 200, 300, 500. The sensor officer's voice was trembling. Sir, they're still coming. When the count reached 1,000, Corvith ordered his fleet to fall back. When it reached 1,500, he sent an emergency message to the Imperial High Command. When it reached 2,000, he simply stared at his view screen and tried to understand what he was seeing. 2,000 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in his fleet. All of them moving together with perfect coordination, like fingers of a single hand. And at the center of the formation, there was something else. Something so massive that Corveth's mind could barely process it. It was a ship. But calling it a ship seemed wrong. It was a mountain, a city, a world. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, its hull covered with weapons, platforms, and sensor arrays and structures that served purposes Corveth could not guess. It did not move through space so much as command it. Light bent around its edges. Reality itself seemed to warp in its presence. What is that? One of his officers whispered. Before Corvith could answer, a communication signal reached his ship. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, impossible to ignore. This is Admiral Helena Cross of the United Earth Expeditionary Force. The voice was human, female, calm and cold as the void itself. For 150 years, humanity has been silent. We withdrew from the galactic community because we were told that our voices did not matter, that our lives did not matter, that we were too primitive, too weak, too insignificant to deserve a place at the table of the great powers. Corvith listened. Around him, his officers listened. Across the galaxy, everyone who could receive the signal listened. We used that time well. While you were fighting your wars and enslaving your weaker neighbors and forgetting that we existed, we were working, building, improving. We took your technology and made it better. We developed weapons you cannot understand. We trained soldiers you cannot defeat. We became something new. A pause, and now we have returned. Corveth found his voice. This is Admiral Corveth of the Velthari Third Fleet. You are trespassing in Imperial space. You will stand down and surrender your vessels for inspection, or you will be fired upon. He did not expect this threat to work. He said it because he had to say something, because he was a soldier and soldiers did not simply run away from threats, even impossible ones. The human admiral's response was almost gentle. Admiral Corveth, I know who you are. I know your service record. I know your family. I know that you were not involved in the atrocities committed against human colonies. You are a soldier, not a war criminal. Corveth felt a chill run down his spine. How could she know these things? Because of this, I am going to give you a choice. You can stand down and withdraw your fleet to a safe distance. No one will be harmed. No shots will be fired. You can live to see another day, another pause, or you can fight. And if you fight, you will die. All of you. Your ships will be destroyed. Your crews will perish. And it will accomplish nothing, because you cannot harm us. Your weapons are useless against our shields. Your ships are slow and weak compared to ours. You are not prepared for what we have become. Corveth looked at his officers. He saw fear in their eyes. He also saw pride. They were Velthari. They did not surrender. They did not run. They had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, and they would not bow to a species they had dismissed as primitive. We will not surrender, Corveth said. The Velthari Empire does not yield to threats. I understand, Admiral Cross replied. I expected this response. Your people have too much pride to admit when you are outmatched. Very well. We will educate you. The transmission ended. Corvith ordered his fleet into battle formation. 200 ships arranged themselves in a perfect defensive sphere, weapons charged, shields raised. They had fought 100 battles. They had defeated a dozen enemies. They were the finest military force the Velthari Empire had ever produced. It did not matter. The human fleet did not charge. They did not maneuver. They simply sat there, waiting, as if daring the Velthari to make the first move. Corvith gave the order to fire. Every weapon in his fleet opened up at once. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, kinetic projectiles, everything they had. The attack was massive, concentrated, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. None of it reached the enemy. The weapon's fire simply stopped. It did not splash against shields. It did not detonate against armor. It just stopped, hanging in space like frozen rain, and then it faded away into nothing. What happened? Corvith demanded. Why didn't our weapons connect? Unknown, sir. It's like they never existed. Our weapons are firing normally, but the energy is being absorbed before it reaches the targets. That's impossible. Yes, sir. It is impossible. And yet it is happening. Corvith watched his fleet fire again and again. Every shot was absorbed. Every attack was negated. They might as well have been throwing rocks at a star. Then the human fleet moved. The black ships came forward, not in a charge, but in a slow, deliberate advance. They did not need to hurry. They had all the time in the universe. When they were in range, they opened fire. Corvith had never seen weapons like these. They were not beams or projectiles. They were something else entirely. They looked like tears in reality, rips in the fabric of space that spread outward from the human ships and consumed everything they touched. The first Velthari ship did not explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, 200 meters of armored warship bristling with weapons. The next moment it was gone, as if it had never been. The second ship followed. Then the third. Then the fourth. All ships. Evasive action, Corvith screamed. Break formation. Scatter. His fleet tried to run. They were not fast enough. The human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, always exactly where they needed to be to cut off escape routes. Their weapons never missed. Their movements were always perfect. They did not fight like a fleet. They fought like a single organism with 2,000 bodies. In 11 minutes, it was over. Of the 200 ships in the Velthari Third Fleet, 187 were destroyed. The remaining 13, including Corvith's flagship, were disabled but intact. Their crews were alive, but their ships would never fly again. Corvith sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet, and tried to understand what had just happened. His entire force, 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy, had been destroyed in less time than it took to eat a meal. The humans had not even been trying. They had been playing. A communication signal reached his ship. Admiral Corvith. It was the human admiral again. You fought bravely. Foolishly. But bravely. I respect that. What do you want? Corvith asked. His voice was hollow. I want you to deliver a message. We have disabled your faster-than-light engines, but your subspace communication array still works. You can contact your high command. What message? Tell them what you saw here today. Tell them about our ships, our weapons, our capabilities. Tell them that this was not an invasion force. This was a demonstration. A warning. A warning of what? Of what is coming. For 150 years, the great powers of this galaxy have committed crimes against humanity and against dozens of other species. You have killed. You have enslaved. You have exploited. And you have never faced consequences, because there was no one strong enough to hold you accountable. Her voice hardened. That has changed. We are the consequences. We are coming for every war criminal, every slaver, every tyrant who thought they could abuse the weak without punishment. We are coming for the Velthari Empire, and the Kethari Confederacy, and the Ascended Realms, and every other power that has blood on its hands. Corvith felt fear. True fear. For the first time in his long career, you can't fight the entire galaxy. Even with your technology, you are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Numbers don't matter anymore, Admiral. You have just seen that. Your 200 ships could not scratch our paint. What makes you think 2,000 will do any better? Or 20,000? Or 200,000? Corvith had no answer. But we are not here to exterminate you. We are not here for genocide. We are here for justice. Surrender your war criminals. Free your slaves. Stop your expansion. Treat the lesser species with respect. Do these things, and we will not harm you. And if we refuse, then we will take what we want by force and the cost will be much higher. For you, not for us. The transmission ended. Corvith sat in silence for a long time. Then he activated his communication array and contacted the Velthari Imperial High Command. He told them everything he had seen. He described the human ships and their impossible weapons. He relayed the Admiral's message word for word. They did not believe him. You expect us to believe that a fleet of primitives destroyed the Third Fleet? The High Commander demanded. This is obviously a trick. The humans must have developed some kind of psychological weapon that affected your crew's minds. It is not a trick. I saw it with my own eyes. They have technology we cannot match. We need to negotiate. The Velthari Empire does not negotiate with lesser species. We will send the First Fleet to investigate. If the humans have truly developed advanced weapons, we will take them for ourselves. If not, we will destroy them once and for all. Corvith tried to argue. He tried to explain that the First Fleet would meet the same fate as the Third. No one listened. He was just a defeated admiral. A failure. A man whose mind had clearly been affected by the stress of battle. The First Fleet was assembled. 500 ships, twice the size of the Third Fleet, commanded by the most decorated admiral in the Empire. They set out for the coordinates where the human armada had been spotted. They never returned. The Second Fleet was sent after them. Then the Fourth, then the Sixth. One by one, the greatest military forces of the Velthari Empire flew into the darkness and disappeared. And still the Empire did not understand. And still the humans kept coming. Admiral Helena Cross stood on the bridge of the Requiem and watched as another enemy fleet was reduced to wreckage. It was the Fifth Fleet they had destroyed this week. The great powers of the galaxy were finally beginning to take humanity seriously. But it was far too late. Status report, she said. All targets eliminated, Admiral. No casualties on our side. 16 enemy vessels disabled but intact. The crews are alive. Good. Send rescue signals to the nearest neutral station. We don't kill prisoners. Yes, Admiral. Cross walked to the forward view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kethari were planning a counterattack. The Ascended Realms were mobilizing their slave armies. The remnants of the Velthari military were regrouping for a last stand. It would not help them. Nothing would help them. They had ignored humanity for too long, dismissed them for too long, abused them for too long. Now the bill was coming due, and it would be paid in full. Send a message to all human forces, Cross said. Tell them Phase 3 begins tomorrow. We're moving on the Kethari homeworld. Yes, Admiral. Any specific orders? Cross thought about it. The Kethari had eaten humans. They had consumed human colonies and absorbed human memories as if it were their right. They were monsters by any definition, but humanity would not become monsters themselves. That was the whole point. That was what separated them from the empires they were fighting. Standard rules of engagement, she said. Military targets only. Civilians are not to be harmed. Any soldier who violates these orders will be court-martialed and imprisoned. The troops will be disappointed, Admiral. Many of them want revenge. I know. That's exactly why we can't allow it. If we become like them, then what was the point of all this? We're not here to exterminate. We're here to liberate. We're here to prove that power doesn't have to mean cruelty. She turned back to the view screen. We're here to build something better. And that starts with showing mercy to those who never showed it to us. The message was sent. The fleet prepared for the next battle. And somewhere in the darkness, in the corridors of power where the great species had ruled unchallenged for millennia, the fear began to spread. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The war lasted 18 months. In the history books of 1,000 worlds, it would be remembered as the Great Humiliation, the Reckoning, the fall of the Elder Powers. But to those who lived through it, it was simply the time when everything they believed about the universe was proven wrong. The Kethari homeworld fell first. It was a massive planet, 3 times the size of Earth, covered in oceans of acid and mountains of bone. The Kethari had been eating other species for so long that their world was decorated with the remains of their victims. Towers built from skulls, gardens fertilized with the ashes of civilizations. It was a monument to hunger and cruelty. The human fleet arrived at dawn. 2,000 ships surrounded the planet, blocking all escape routes, cutting all communications. The Cathari Defense Force, 500 vessels strong, moved to intercept. They lasted 6 minutes. When the last Cathari warship was destroyed, Admiral Cross sent a message to the surface. People of the Cathari Confederacy, your military has been defeated. Your leaders are surrounded. You have 2 choices. Surrender and face justice for your crimes, or resist and be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. The Cathari leaders chose to resist. They were proud creatures, ancient and terrible, and they could not imagine submitting to beings they had once considered food. Human ground forces landed in 12 locations simultaneously. They did not come with overwhelming numbers. They did not need them. Each human soldier wore powered armor that made them faster, stronger, and tougher than any Cathari warrior. Each one carried weapons that could level buildings. Each one was connected to a tactical network that allowed them to coordinate perfectly, moving like a single organism with thousands of bodies. The fighting was brutal but short. The Cathari fought with everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched human armor. Their claws could not penetrate human shields. Their psychic attacks were blocked by neural implants that had been designed specifically to counter them. In 3 days, the Cathari government surrendered. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human soldiers marched through the capital city. They expected a massacre. They expected the humans to take revenge for centuries of being eaten, hunted, consumed. They expected rivers of blood. What they saw was very different. The human soldiers did not harm civilians. They did not loot. They did not burn. They moved through the city with perfect discipline, capturing military installations and government buildings while leaving homes and schools untouched. When they found the great feeding halls where the Cathari had consumed other species, they sealed them. They did not destroy them. They did not make a spectacle of rage. They simply locked the doors and posted guards. Why? A Cathari elder asked a human officer. We have eaten your people. We have devoured your children. Why do you not kill us? The officer looked at him with eyes that showed no hatred, only something that might have been pity. Because killing you wouldn't bring them back. Because becoming monsters ourselves would make their deaths meaningless. We're not here for revenge. We're here to make sure you can never do this again. The Cathari leaders were arrested and put on trial. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Recordings of feedings, lists of victims, testimony from survivors of species that had been nearly wiped out. The trials were fair. The accused had lawyers. They were allowed to speak in their defense. They were convicted anyway, because they were guilty. And everyone knew it. They were not executed. The humans did not believe in execution. Instead, they were imprisoned on a barren moon, condemned to spend the rest of their long lives remembering what they had done. The Cathari Confederacy was dissolved. The hunting fleets were dismantled. The feeding halls were converted into memorials for the victims, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the species that had lived in fear of being eaten could sleep peacefully. The Ascended Realms fell next. This was a harder fight. The Dominarch had been preparing for centuries, building an empire of slaves and soldiers that stretched across 1,000 systems. He had weapons the Cathari could not imagine. He had armies that numbered in the billions. He believed himself to be a god. He was wrong. The human attack came from everywhere at once, not just from space, but from within. For decades, human agents had been infiltrating the Ascended Realms, posing as slaves, working their way into positions of trust. They had been whispering to the oppressed, teaching them, organizing them, promising them that someday, help would come. When the human fleet appeared in the sky above the Dominarch's throne world, the slave populations rose up. 40 star systems exploded into rebellion simultaneously. Guards were overwhelmed. Prisons were opened. Weapons, caches that had been hidden by human agents for years were distributed to the oppressed. The Dominarch found himself fighting a war on 2 fronts. His armies were formidable, but they were spread too thin. His soldiers were well trained, but they were used to fighting helpless slaves, not determined rebels backed by human technology and human advisors. The war in the Ascended Realms lasted 3 months. At the end of it, the Dominarch stood alone in his throne room, surrounded by human soldiers. "You cannot do this," he said. His crystal shell flickered with rage. "I am immortal. I am eternal. I have existed for 100,000 years. You are insects. You are nothing." Admiral Cross walked through the ranks of her soldiers and stood before him. She was small compared to his towering form. She did not seem afraid. "You were a god to your slaves," she said. "You made them worship you. You made them believe they were less than nothing. But gods can fall, Dominarch. Even immortal ones. What are you going to do? Kill me? You cannot. My consciousness exists beyond this shell. I will simply create a new body. We know. That's why we're not going to kill you." She held up a small device. It looked like a simple metal sphere. "This is a consciousness trap. Our scientists developed it specifically for beings like you. When activated, it will capture your essence and hold it in a state of suspended animation. You will not die. You will not be reborn. You will simply stop forever." The Dominarch tried to run. He tried to use his powers to escape, but the human soldiers were faster, and their weapons were stronger. And in the end, he was just another tyrant facing the consequences of his actions. The trap was activated. The Dominarch's light faded. His shell went dark. The being who had ruled 1,000 worlds for 100,000 years was reduced to a small metal sphere, placed in a vault, and forgotten. The slaves of the ascended realms were freed. Billions of beings who had never known anything but servitude suddenly found themselves with choices, with rights, with futures. Human aid workers flooded the former slave worlds. They brought food and medicine and teachers. They helped build new governments. They did not demand anything in return. "Why are you helping us?" a former slave asked a human doctor. "We are not your people. We have nothing to offer you." The doctor smiled as she treated his wounds. "Because you needed help. Because no one should have to live in chains. Because helping you is the right thing to do. But you could rule us instead. You have the power. You could become our new masters." "Yes, we could. But we don't want to be masters. We don't want to be emperors. We just want to be good neighbors." The former slave did not understand. He had never known a powerful being that did not want to dominate. It would take years before he truly believed that the humans meant what they said. But eventually, he believed. Eventually, they all did. The Velthari Empire was the last to fall. They had been preparing since the destruction of the Third Fleet. They had pulled every ship from every corner of their territory. They had awakened weapons that had not been used in millennia. They had made alliances with species they had once conquered, promising them freedom in exchange for military support. When the human fleet arrived at the Velthari homeworld, they faced the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 10,000 warships, 1 trillion soldiers, weapons capable of cracking planets. It was not enough. The battle lasted 1 day. When it was over, the Velthari military no longer existed. Their ancient weapons had been neutralized. Their planetary defenses had been dismantled. Their proud fleet was scattered debris drifting through space. The Velthari High Chancellor, the same being who had dismissed humanity's grievances all those years ago, was captured in his palace. He was brought before Admiral Cross in chains. "You have destroyed everything," he said. "Our empire, our military, our pride. Are you satisfied?" Cross looked at him without hatred. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. She had dreamed of it since she was 7 years old, since she watched from a rescue shuttle as the Velthari bombarded her homeworld. She had imagined what she would say to this creature when she finally stood before him. Now that the moment had come, she felt only emptiness. Satisfied? No. Nothing can bring back the people you killed. Nothing can undo the centuries of suffering you caused. But we can make sure it never happens again. So you will rule us now? You will become the new masters of the galaxy? No. We will leave. Once we have ensured that your military cannot threaten anyone, once we have freed your prisoners and tried your war criminals, we will go home. You can rebuild. You can create a new society. But if you ever return to your old ways, if you ever again prey upon the weak, we will come back. And next time, we will not be so gentle." The Chancellor stared at her. "I don't understand. You have the power to take everything. Why would you leave?" "Because power is not the same as right. Because ruling others against their will is wrong, even when you have the strength to do it. Because we remember what it was like to be powerless, and we will not become the thing we fought against." She turned and walked away. "You are fools," the Chancellor called after her. "You will regret this mercy. Given time, we will rebuild. We will grow strong again. And then we will have our revenge." Cross stopped. She looked back over her shoulder. Maybe in 1,000 years, you'll be strong enough to challenge us again. But I don't think so. I think you've learned something today. I think you've learned that there are consequences for cruelty. I think you've learned that the weak do not stay weak forever. She smiled. It was not a cruel smile. And I think you've learned that humans keep their promises. We said we would remember. We said we would come back. We did. Remember that, Chancellor. Remember what happens when you underestimate us. She walked out of the palace. Behind her, the Chancellor was left alone with his thoughts and his failures. The war was over. In 18 months, humanity had dismantled 3 of the most powerful empires the galaxy had ever known. They had freed billions of slaves. They had brought war criminals to justice. They had proven that they were no longer the weak, insignificant species that could be ignored and abused. But they had not become conquerors. They had not built an empire of their own. They had not replaced one tyranny with another. Instead, they began to rebuild. Human engineers helped reconstruct the infrastructure that had been damaged in the fighting. Human doctors treated the wounded, regardless of species. Human diplomats helped former enemies negotiate peace treaties with each other. The galaxy watched in amazement. This was not how powerful species were supposed to behave. This was not how victory was supposed to look. Where were the parades of triumph? Where were the monuments to human glory? Where were the chains around the necks of the defeated? There were none of these things. There were only human beings, working quietly, helping where they could, asking for nothing in return. I don't understand them, a Velthari senator said to his colleague. They could have taken everything. They could have enslaved us all. Why didn't they? His colleague had no answer. Neither did anyone else. But slowly, over time, the galaxy began to understand. They began to see that power did not have to mean cruelty. That strength did not have to mean domination. That victory did not have to mean humiliation. They began to see that there was another way. Admiral Helena Cross stood on the bridge of the Requiem one last time. The great ship was returning to Earth. The war was over. The mission was complete. She was tired. She had been fighting, in one way or another, for almost a century. She had given everything she had to this cause. Now it was time to rest. Admiral, her aide said, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. They want to know what happens next. They want to know if there will be a new galactic concord. Cross considered this. Tell them yes. There will be a new concord. But this one will be different. This one will include everyone, not just the powerful. This one will protect the weak, not exploit them. This one will be built on justice, not on fear. And who will lead it? No one. Or everyone. That's the whole point. No more emperors, no more masters. Just equals, working together, treating each other with respect. Her aide looked skeptical. Do you really think that's possible? After everything that's happened, Cross looked out at the stars. I don't know, but I know it's worth trying. We've shown them what we can do when we're angry. Now let's show them what we can do when we're hopeful. The Requiem entered faster than light travel. The stars blurred into lines of light, and humanity began the long journey home, carrying with them the hope of a better future. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and failures and disappointments. There would be species who refused to change, who clung to their old ways, who tried to rebuild their empires in secret. There would be conflicts and disagreements and painful compromises, but for the first time in galactic history, there was a chance, a real chance for something better. A chance for a galaxy where power was used to protect rather than exploit, where the strong helped the weak instead of crushing them, where justice was more than just a word spoken by hypocrites. Humanity had given them that chance. Now it was up to everyone to see if they could take it. The Great Hall had been rebuilt. It was not the same hall where the old Galactic Concord had met. That building had been damaged during the war and left as a memorial, a reminder of what had been and what could never be again. This new hall stood on a neutral world, chosen by a committee of representatives from dozens of species, built to symbolize the new era that was beginning. It was smaller than the old hall, more intimate. The seats were arranged in a circle rather than a hierarchy, so that no delegation looked down upon any other. The walls were made of simple stone, not shifting crystal. The ceiling was open to the sky, letting in natural light. 300 delegations filled the hall. Some were from the old powers, the Velthari, humbled but still proud, the remnants of the Kethari, now forbidden from eating sentient beings, even representatives of the ascended realms. Ordinary citizens who had been elevated to leadership after their immortal masters were imprisoned, but most of the delegations were from species that had never had a voice before. Former slaves, former victims, former nobodies. They had all come here because they had been invited, because for the first time in history, someone had told them that their voices mattered. At the center of the hall, where the podium stood, a single human waited. Director Yuki Tanaka was 173 years old. Human medical science had advanced far beyond what the galaxy had imagined possible, and she had been kept alive through treatments that bordered on miraculous. She was old. Yes, her hair was white, and her face was lined with the marks of a long and difficult life, but her eyes were sharp, and her voice was strong, and her mind was as clear as it had been the day she walked out of the old Concord chamber 150 years ago. She remembered that day very well. She remembered the contempt in the eyes of the elder species. She remembered the laughter of the Cathari. She remembered the cold dismissal of the Dominarch. She remembered how small she had felt, how powerless, how utterly alone. She did not feel small anymore. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Her voice carried through the hall without amplification. "I know that some of you traveled very far to be here. I know that some of you are still afraid of us, of what we might do with the power we have demonstrated. I understand that fear. I want to address it directly." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. 150 years ago, I stood in a hall much larger than this one. I asked for justice for my people. I was laughed at. I was dismissed. I was told that humans were too primitive, too insignificant, too unimportant to deserve protection. A murmur ran through the assembly. Many of them had heard this story. Many of them had lived similar stories themselves. I walked out of that hall and told my government what had happened, and they told me something I did not expect. They told me that they had been waiting for this moment, that they had known, for a long time, that the Concord would never accept us, that the great powers would never treat us as equals. She paused. They told me that we had been preparing. The hall was silent now. Everyone was listening. For 300 years, while we attended Concord meetings and submitted proposals and pretended to play by the rules, we had been quietly building, gathering technology, training soldiers, developing weapons, not because we wanted war, but because we knew that someday, war would come to us whether we wanted it or not. The weak are always targets. We decided that we would not be weak forever. She took a deep breath. When I walked out of that hall, we began the next phase of our preparations. We went silent. We disappeared from the galactic community. We let you forget about us, and in that silence, in that forgetting, we became something new, something you could not ignore. A Velthari delegate rose from his seat. He was young, born after the war, and he had been raised in a very different Velthari society than his ancestors. "Director Tanaka, may I ask a question?" Yuki nodded. "Of course. Why are you telling us this? Why reveal your strategy? Aren't you worried that other species will learn from your example and do the same thing?" Yuki smiled. It was the first smile many of the delegates had seen on a human face, and they found it surprisingly warm. "I hope they will learn from our example. That's the whole point. I want every species in this room to understand that they don't have to accept oppression, that even the weakest, most despised people can become powerful if they work together, that patience and determination can overcome any obstacle." She spread her arms to encompass the entire hall. "But I also want you to understand something else, something more important. We did not build our Armada because we wanted to conquer. We built it because we wanted to be safe. We wanted to be respected. We wanted to have a voice." She lowered her arms. "Now we have a voice. And what we want to say with that voice is this. We don't want to rule you. We don't want to be your masters. We don't want to replace the old tyranny with a new one. We just want to sit at the table with you, as equals, and work together to build something better." Another delegate rose. This one was from a species Yuki did not recognize. A small, furry creature with large eyes and delicate hands. "Director, my people were slaves of the ascended realms for 10,000 years. Human soldiers freed us. Human doctors healed us. Human teachers helped us rebuild our society. We owe you everything. Why would you not want to rule us? We would accept your rule gladly. You have earned it." Yuki walked toward the little delegate. She knelt down so that she was at eye level with him. "What is your name?" she asked. Kirill, the creature said. I am Kirill of the Tethany. Kirill, let me ask you something. When you were a slave, did you dream of being free? Every day. And in those dreams, what did freedom look like? Did it look like having a different master? A kinder master? Kirill was silent for a moment. No, he admitted. It looked like having no master at all. It looked like making my own choices, living my own life. Yuki nodded. That's what freedom is, Kirill. Not having a good master, but having no master. We could rule you. Yes, we could be kind rulers, fair rulers, better than the ascended realms ever were. But you would still be slaves. Just slaves with comfortable chains. She stood up. We didn't fight a war and sacrifice so many lives just to become another empire. We fought so that everyone, everywhere, could be free, including you, including your people, including every species in this room. She returned to the podium. That is why we are proposing this new Concord. Not a council of the powerful, but a council of equals. Every species gets one vote, regardless of size or strength. No one can be forced to do anything against their will. Decisions are made by consensus, not by threats. The strong protect the weak, not because they are forced to, but because it is right. A Cathari delegate shifted in his seat. The Cathari had been stripped of their military and their hunting fleets, but they were still present, still part of the galactic community. They had been required to change their ways as a condition of their continued existence. And what happens when someone breaks the rules? The Cathari asked. His voice was bitter. What happens when a species decides to prey upon the weak again? Yuki looked at him directly. Then the rest of us stop them. Together. That is the other part of this new Concord. We don't just talk. We act. When someone commits atrocities, we don't debate for years while millions die. We intervene. We protect the victims. We hold the guilty accountable. So you will be the enforcers. The police of the galaxy. No. We all will be. Every species that joins this Concord agrees to contribute to the common defense. Every species that joins agrees to uphold the common laws. It's not just humanity against the bad actors. It's everyone. Together. The Cathari was silent. He did not like this answer, but he could not argue against it. A former slave delegate from the Ascended Realms raised her hand. She was a tall, thin being with blue skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Director Tanaka, I have a question about the trials. Go ahead. Many of us lost everything to the empires that ruled us. Our families, our homes, our entire civilizations. The leaders of those empires have been tried and punished. But the punishment seems light. Imprisonment instead of execution. Rehabilitation instead of torture. Why? Why show mercy to those who showed none to us? This was the question Yuki had been waiting for. She had known it would be asked, and she had spent a long time thinking about how to answer it. I understand your anger, she said. I share it. The beings who hurt you, who hurt all of us, deserve to suffer. Part of me wants them to suffer. Part of me wants revenge. She paused. But revenge is a trap. Once you start down that path, it never ends. You hurt them, so their children want to hurt you. You kill their leaders, so their people want to kill yours. The cycle goes on, generation after generation, until there's no one left who remembers what started it. She looked around the hall. We have a chance here. A chance to break that cycle. A chance to show that power doesn't have to mean cruelty. That justice doesn't have to mean brutality. We can be better than those who hurt us. We can prove that we deserve the freedom we've fought for. She smiled. And honestly, there's a practical reason too. The former leaders of the empires are imprisoned. They will spend the rest of their long lives thinking about what they did. They will watch as the galaxy moves on without them. They will see their victims thrive while they rot in cells. That's not mercy. That's a different kind of punishment. A punishment that doesn't make us monsters. The blue-skinned delegate nodded slowly. She did not look entirely satisfied, but she seemed to accept the answer. Yuki returned to her main topic. So, this is what we are proposing. A new galactic concord. A council of equals. A commitment to mutual defense and mutual respect. No more empires. No more slaves. No more forgotten species left to suffer while the powerful look away. She looked around the room one more time. I know this is not easy. I know there is a lot of fear in this room. Fear of us, fear of each other, fear of the future. But I also know there is hope. I can see it in your eyes. The hope that things can be different. The hope that the future doesn't have to be like the past." She smiled. "You called us primitive. You were right. In a way. We were young, impatient, emotional. But you mistook youth for weakness. You did not understand that humans do not surrender. We do not forget. And we do not stop." She spread her arms wide. "We are here now. Not as conquerors, not as masters, as partners. The question is, will you join us?" The hall was silent for a long moment. 300 delegations, representing thousands of worlds and trillions of lives, considered what they had heard. Then, slowly, one delegate stood. It was Kirill, the little Tithani who had been a slave of the Ascended Realms. "My people were nothing," he said. His voice was small but steady. "We were property. We did not count. When the humans came, we expected them to become our new owners. Instead, they told us we were free. They asked us what we wanted. No one had ever asked us that before." He looked at Yuki. "The Tithani will join this new conquered, not because we are afraid of you, because we believe in what you are trying to build." Another delegate stood, and another, and another. One by one, the representatives rose from their seats. Former slaves, former victims, even some members of the former empires, those who understood that the old ways could not continue. Not everyone stood. Some remained seated, unwilling to trust, unwilling to change. But they were few, and they were silent, and they knew that the tide had turned against them. Yuki watched as the hall filled with standing figures. She felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. "Very well," she said. Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the emotion she had kept hidden. "Let the record show that on this day, the new galactic concord was founded. Let the record show that 300 species came together, not as master and slave, not as predator and prey, but as equals." She paused. "Let the record show that a new era has begun." The hall erupted in sound. Cheers, applause, cries of joy from species who had never expected to see this day. It was not perfect. There would be problems and conflicts and disappointments ahead, but it was a start. Yuki stepped down from the podium. A young human aide rushed to her side. "Director, that was incredible. You actually did it." Yuki shook her head. "I didn't do anything. They did, all of them. They chose to believe that things could be different. That's the hard part. That's the miracle." She looked around the hall one more time, at the beings from hundreds of different worlds, talking and laughing and crying together. Species that had been at war for millennia were shaking hands. Former slaves were embracing their former captors who had changed their ways. It was messy and chaotic and utterly beautiful. "We gave them a chance," Yuki said softly. "The rest is up to them." Outside the hall, the sun was setting over the neutral world. Its light painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere among those stars, Earth waited. Humanity waited. They had done what they set out to do. They had proven that they were not weak. They had built something new, something better. Now they would see if it could last. Yuki walked out of the hall and stood under the darkening sky. She was 173 years old, and she was very tired. She had given her entire life to this cause. She had sacrificed everything, but looking up at the stars, she knew it had been worth it. The galaxy had ignored humanity for 300 years. They had laughed at them, dismissed them, abused them. They had thought humans were nothing, insignificant, forgettable. They had been wrong. And now, finally, the galaxy would never make that mistake again. Yuki smiled as the stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with light. Each one was a sun. Each sun had worlds. Each world had people. And now, all of them had a chance. That was enough. That was everything. The new era had begun.